This is for you.
What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, and it is Philly the podcast. I am here with my guy, as always, Brandon. Before we get into our guest, be sure to hit that like, hit that share, subscribe, you know what I'm saying? Join the family. But y'all know what it is, man. Y'all know who we got on today. We have legendary Eagles reporter, Derrick Gunn. It's you, man. I promise. It's you.
Legendary. I'm like, who's he talking about, man?
Man. It is a pleasure to have you on, man. How are you doing, man?
Good, man. Happy to be here. Doing great, man. Keeping busy, with this pandemic and all this craziness that we've never experienced before up until last February, March. We've all had to kind of reinvent ourselves in a lot of ways and learn new technology and stuff. So, me being borderline technology illiterate, it's been an incredible learning journey for me.
Definitely. Like you said, you're reinventing yourself. You do have the new Gun on One podcast I've been checking out. I don't know how new exactly, but I've been checking it out on YouTube. I do have the link in the description, so everybody has to go check it out. You had some really good interviews. One with Brandon Graham that was absolutely hilarious. Having to go get food and everything. So the first question I wanted to ask you was kind of based off of that. And personally, I'm going to school right now for sportscasting. So this is a little bit of a, selfish question. But how were you able to build such great bonds with these players? I felt like you were much more than just a guy with a microphone and a camera asking questions. Really seemed like you built relationships with these guys. What advice can you give somebody like me, looking to get into that field?
Honesty is the best policy. And that's what I've tried to abide by my whole career. I've covered the Chargers, the Packers, the Steelers, and of course now the Eagles. And I've always tried to be as honest as I could possibly be. And let's face it, when you're in the locker room, and not just football, in any sport, especially in a large market like Philadelphia, players, especially new players coming in, whether they be rookies or vets who have been traded here or signed here as free agents, they're overwhelmed with 50, 60 microphones stuck in their faces every day in the locker room. This is not like Cincinnati, Green Bay, or Buffalo, where you might have 10, 12 people covering your sport every day. Man, you've got 50, 60. Sometimes, especially around the playoffs, you have more media people in an Eagles locker room than you do players. So it's crazy in a confined quarter. So what do you want to do to separate yourself from the general masses? See, I've always said, first and foremost, when you've decided that you want to do this, do your homework, and that's every day. Learn something about the individuals that you want to talk to, not just the X's and O's and their stats, because they get tired of talking about that. You may find out you might be from where they're from. You may know a town as well as they do. You may have a similar hobby that they do. And even if you don't, you can tell me a lot of these guys, they like to hunt, they like to fish, they're into music. A lot of them are into art and stuff like that. So to strike up a conversation and get people comfortable with you, don't just be there throwing mics in their phones and trying to ask them questions and trying to get that so-called perfect quote for the day. And then when you start to get to know the individual, they start to talk back to you, not as an athlete-reporter relationship, but they test you in some ways just to see what you might or might not say. And once they realize that certain conversations are not going to go any farther than you and them, then they begin to open up a little bit more. And then it's like the domino effect. They begin to tell people to the right and to the left, hey, this is one of the few guys that you can trust. I always tell people in my career when they've asked me that question, why have you been able to form relationships with athletes when many others don't? I said, it's because of what I don't say compared to what I do say. For every one story that I break, for every one story that I tell, there's 15, 20 stories that I can never tell. But I have a better understanding of the inner working mechanisms of what's going on behind closed doors and who's telling the truth and who's lying, because I've been tested early on, and now they can trust me with a lot of stuff. And even though I'm not with NBC right now, as you guys have seen across my Twitter platform and stuff, I'm still out there breaking stories. I'm still putting out information. It's because of that trust factor. So first and foremost, Be an individual. You don't have to be a character. There's some people that like to do a shtick. They like to be loud and heard. Oh, it works for some. It doesn't work for others. But when you're in a market like Philadelphia, people in Philadelphia want real.
Right.
You don't have to be a class clown. You don't have to be a shtick for us to like you. If you're telling us quality information, if you're honest, if you seem to be insightful, people will gravitate towards you, no matter how nice you are, how thorough you are. I have to add this as well. Everybody's not going to like you. So you have to get that in your mind as well, whether it's because of your voice, the way you dress, your skin color, the way you present yourself on TV. You'll kill yourself trying to please everybody. But if you be true to who you are, more people will gravitate towards you than away from you. And that is my simple lesson for today.
That's more than just broadcasting lessons. That's life lessons right there in anything you do. So between us and our viewers,
you guys just got some free information. So I'm not going to charge you this time, but next time I expect the check to be in the mail.
I just re-signed up for FAFSA, so I'll make sure you get a cut too.
Oh, bless you, my son. Woo.
But speaking of, oh my bad. I was going to say, speaking of Philadelphia and honesty, there's just been a lot of drama, I feel like, that's been going on in Philadelphia this offseason alone than ever I've seen in my tenure as an Eagles fan. So to kind of start off at the beginning of the offseason, what were your initial thoughts on Doug Pederson's firing? Was it surprising, or was there some signs going on the last couple of years that kind of was like his job might actually be in jeopardy, and then it just finally blew up at the end of this season?
My insight on that wavered back and forth. During the latter part of the season, there was a part of me that thought, well, maybe he won't come back. But at the end of the season, I thought, okay, Doug Pederson will be back. They'll work out the differences between upstairs and the quarterback, whatever the case may be. Doug, he's won a Super Bowl for this organization. He'll be back. So when the bomb dropped that he was out, I'm like, wow, okay. So obviously, there were some things going on upstairs between him and Howie Roseman that just didn't quite mesh. And so, I look at Doug Pederson, he's getting paid anyway in 2021. Imagine getting to sit at home and make that kind of money to do absolutely nothing for 1 year. But Doug Pederson is going to get another head coaching job. Heck, if Adam Gase, of all people, can get 2 head coaching jobs after floundering in Miami, goes to the Jets, and it's even worse. Doug Pederson's getting another head coaching job in the NFL. There's only 8, 9 coaches in the NFL that have actually won a Super Bowl. He was one of them. So somebody's going to give him another chance, and he'll be able to pick and choose what he wants to do and where he wants to go. So obviously, now the Eagles have to move in a different direction. And I thought, okay, now that they've gotten rid of the head coach, everything will smooth itself over with the quarterback. But as we're seeing, maybe such is not the case.
Yeah, now to keep going off of that a little bit more, like you said, you have so many people in the locker room, so it's easier to get a sense, and like you said, you have such, strong connections. What leads a team to this point? Like you said, you've seen so many different locker rooms. Is there some type of common denominator that just kind of happens in locker rooms that brings teams to these points? Or is this, because this to us at least is one of those things we've never really seen before. So, is there something that you can kind of point to that maybe you saw that you were like, oh, okay, I could see now how that snowballed into this?
Losing breeds negativity, plain and simple. When you're losing, everybody's frustrated. Especially guys who thought they had a chance to compete for a division title, thought they had the nucleus of players to go deep into the playoffs. When you looked at this team on paper before the season began, they looked pretty good. If you go back to May and June, then all of a sudden, Brandon Brooks is gone. Andre Dillard is gone. Lane Johnson never fully healed. Zach Ertz is out. Deshaun Jackson is out. When is Alshon Jeffrey coming back? You had 13, 14 different offensive line combinations throughout the course of the season. Your quarterback was sacked 50 times and was hit over 110 times. They shot themselves in the foot more so than they prospered. And so when all of that happens, it compounds and it gets to a boiling point. Doug Pederson took pride in when he took this job building a positive culture in that locker room. And he had the right people to do it, the right personalities, a Brandon Graham, a Brandon Brooks, a Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, even your quarterback, Carson Wentz, all positive influence in that locker room that you wanted newcomers to gravitate towards and, of course, young players to look up to. But, so when you start to lose, people start whispering, things start leaking out. So I've seen it happen too many times in all my years of covering sports. So I'm not surprised that it got to the point that it did with this team.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, been very interesting and very drama filled, especially with Carson Wentz's silence, right?
Right.
You would hope that he could come out, say something, and maybe either let us Eagles fans, content creators, media people know what his stance on things. So as a media person yourself, what has his silence really taught you? Or do you think this is maybe his agent saying, hey, don't say a word?
Hey, but before I answer your question, I just want people to know I'm drinking sparkling water. This is not beer. People sit down, DGunn hitting the bottle in the afternoon. No, I don't.
Drinking on the job.
No. It's sparkling water. Just want people to know that people are like, man, my man doing a live podcast. Drinking. No. All right, so you can stop that mess now. But anyway, it's a good question. And my answer would be silence is golden. And Carson Wentz could have very easily squashed all this by putting out a statement through the organization, by putting out a statement on his Twitter or Instagram accounts. He tweets about everything else, hunting, his AO1 Foundation. He very easily could have said, as many athletes do, especially with the advent of social media now, hey, I don't know where this stuff is coming from, but I want to be part of the Philadelphia Eagles moving forward. I'm all about the Philadelphia Eagles. But the line of communication, as we've seen, has been silent. Now, his agent maybe have said, hey, don't say anything. I'll take care of this. Or maybe his agent is working behind the scenes trying to get him relocated somewhere else without causing too much friction. But the longer Carson doesn't say anything, the more we are open to speculate, okay, he doesn't want to be here. But see, now the Eagles are caught between the rock and the hard place because I knew they're not going to get with it. You're not getting for Carson Wentz coming off the season he had in 2020 what the Rams got for a Jared Goff. That's not going to happen, okay? Because that's a true telling tale. If I'm a GM and I'm a prospective buyer in the Carson Wentz market, how do I go sell my boss on a quarterback who had his worst statistical season of his career, even though he's still in the prime of his career in 2020? And, oh, yeah, we want to give up a couple of first-round picks, mortgage our future to spin the roulette wheel on a guy who we don't know if 2020 was just a blip on the radar or if it's an indication of the decline of Carson Wentz. Now, he's still a young man at 28 years old, so he's got a lot of football ahead of him. But we don't know. And then, of course, you couple in the fact all the rumors we've heard. Carson deliberately changing plays at the line of scrimmage because he didn't like certain plays, headbutting with the coach. Carson Wentz is uncoachable. See, all of this stuff adds up to me as a potential buyer that I have to go try to sell the guy who writes the checks. And if this doesn't pan out, if it turns out that Carson is uncoachable, difficult in the locker room, changes plays when he feels like it, I may not have a job at the end of the year. Now, for Howie Roseman, he could be left with the egg on his face because basically, if there is this rift between you and Carson and you can't patch this up and you're trying to move what was, quote unquote, a franchise commodity in your organization, and you get lesser value for this franchise commodity, if he goes to Chicago, Indianapolis, or where, and all of a sudden plays at a Pro Bowl level like he was playing in 2017, as you guys know, the fan base of Philadelphia is going to come raining down on Howie Roseman even more so than they are right now. And on top of that, you didn't even get a first-round pick for this guy. You got a second and a third round for Carson Wentz. See, once again, you know what? Why is Howie Roseman running the show? We got to hear that all over again time and time again. So it's like a situation of being damned if you do, damned if you don't when you're in Howie Roseman's shoes. If you keep him here, I would assume based on the money alone that he would be your starter. How do you justify a $130 million quarterback being a backup to a second-year quarterback? Especially with, you're already going to take the cap hit whether he's here or you move him elsewhere. You're going to take a big cap hit as it is for 2021. So if he comes back here and the first time that Carson Wentz, especially if fans are back in the stands, the first time Carson Wentz throws an incomplete pass, ricochets a pass off somebody's helmet, people are going to start screaming, bring Jalen Hurts in. So a new head coach in Nick Sirianni who comes in here, He's walking into a mess as it is.
Mm-hmm.
So then he's got to deal with that as well. Not a good situation right now for this team.
Yeah, I've said before on many of our lives, Brandon can attest to this. I feel like we have handcuffed our whole franchise, our whole front office, I should say, because of our decision making the past couple of years. So it's a really rough situation to come into. It actually brings me into a question that one of our Discord members asked. He asked, what were your thoughts on this wide receiver core? And will Nick Sirianni, you just brought up Nick Sirianni, our new coach, be able to get the best out of them this year? What are your thoughts on that?
If what Frank Reich has said about Nick Sirianni is true, that Nick was very instrumental in orchestrating game plans week in and week out. When you look at the Colts offense, I like the diversity in their offense. I like how they spread the field. I like how they like to run the ball as well as throw the ball. I like plays of deception that they were running there as well. So it's a creative type of offense. If that's a similar offense that Nick Sirianni is going to run here, I can't wait to see it unfold. When you talk about the wide receivers the Eagles have, I like the young nucleus. Jalen Reagor, unfortunately, is put in an unenviable situation because no matter what he does, he's going to be compared to the guy who was taken right behind him and Justin Jefferson and other wide receivers that came out in probably the best draft historically for wide receivers in 2020. So he's always going to have that. We saw glimpses of what Quez Watkins can do and the speed that Quez Watkins brings to the table. I like Greg Ward as a slot receiver. John Hightower has potential, just needs to learn to secure the ball a little bit better. And, of course, I'm sure they're going to add another receiver or two somewhere down the road between free agency and the draft for this year as well. So I like where it's going. The offensive line, to me, is the key. Is Jason Kelce coming back for 2021? We don't know. Will Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson hold up in 2021? Who's your left tackle? We don't even know. We have no idea. I don't put my faith into Andre Dillard. I'm not a big Andre Dillard fan, and that's not chastising or belittling Andre Dillard. I'm just not a big fan of offensive linemen from the Pac-12 conference. It's just the way it is. So there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts about this team as we look ahead to 2021. But in terms of the receiving core, I like where they're going. I would like to see them bring in a veteran presence. I don't believe Alshon and D-Jack are going to be back here. But I would like to see them maybe, pick up a bargain basement veteran receiver sometime in late April, May, to have that veteran presence to kind of guide these young guys and to help mold them a little bit more. But I like so far what I'm seeing right now from these young guys.
Now, let me kind of stay on that for a second, because like you said, you're not a huge fan of Dillard. I'm trying to hold out hope. My hope is that he plays up to that first round pick. I think everybody is, but I can understand that. So let me ask you this. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this. My whole chat section has been saying it for the past 10 minutes that we've been talking. What are your thoughts on Carson? And I hate to use the word, but is he fixable? Do you think that he's somebody that in Philly we can fix his career? We can go forward with him?
Any athlete is fixable if he wants to be fixed. It has to start with his mindset. And where does he think he is in his career? And you have to be as brutally honest with yourself as anything else, more so than having somebody else tell you what was wrong with your overall mechanics. So that's where you have to start. Then Carson has to look at what Nick Sirianni wants to do in an offense. Does he feel comfortable working within the structure of a Nick Sirianni offense on paper? So I do think that Sirianni and his coaching staff could fix Carson. You got to have an offense for Carson where he's not a stationary target. He has that ability to roll out of the pocket. I think Carson throws better on the run more so than standing still in the pocket. I think Carson is more comfortable moving outside of the pocket. You look at some of the better quarterbacks in the league, even from the old guys to the young guys, from an Aaron Rodgers, even an old guy like Phillip Rivers, on down to this new generation of quarterbacks, the Mahomes, the Lamar Jacksons, Kyler Murray, so on and so forth. Even Drew Brees. Drew Brees, you see how he rolls outside of the pocket to buy himself some extra time. I think that's the kind of offense you need for Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz has the escapability. He's a big kid. He can break tackles. Plus, he can run away from a few people. So I think if Carson feels that this offense that Nick Sirianni is trying to put together is what he's looking for, then I think it will be beneficial to Carson to be all in on it, and to prove people wrong, that he's not a malcontent, that he's not a locker room cancer, that he's not a divider. that he's not defiant when it comes to being coached up. So if he can do those things, yeah, I think Carson Wentz is definitely fixable. I think Carson Wentz could play at a Pro Bowl level if he's in the right offense.
And to keep on Nick Sirianni, obviously his press conference wasn't the best in the world. What were your thoughts on Nick Sirianni's first press conference? And do you think that has any kind of indictment on how he could be as a coach?
No, it was exactly what I thought it would be. I mean, here's a guy who's just so happy to be a head coach in the National Football League. And luckily for him, he didn't have the contingent of media right in front of him in the NovaCare complex. But, you know, he's being hit by questions left and right. And of course, the PR staff controls it. And of course, he's been groomed by Howie for Louis what to say and what not to touch on right now, because there's so much uncertainty right now. I mean, put yourself in Nick Sirianni's shoes. What the heck are you going to say right now?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Is Carson Wentz your quarterback? Well, as of today, he is. I don't know about tomorrow. You know, how do you feel about the nucleus of players that you have here? Well, I like what I see, even though I know the roster is going to be changed. I mean, you know, he's in a tough situation. All he wanted, just like any assistant coach, any position coach, is a chance to become a head coach in the National Football League. There are only 32 of these jobs available. And so now that he's going to get his feet wet in what right now looks like a mess, you know, let's give him some time. You know, let's see what they do in terms of deletions and additions. By that, I mean deletions of veterans who are not going to be here, additions by what free agents are going to try to bring in here, plus the draft as well. They let them get through mini camps, OTAs, training camps, preseason. You know, I know a lot of people out there are like already, I don't like Nick Sirianni. Why? What did he do to you? You know, you haven't even seen him run a play yet. You haven't seen him call a play yet. You don't like him? Why? You know, I mean, come on. Let's be fair here. Right. Let's see. Now, if they hit the ground running and they lose out of the gate 3, 4, 5 games, we all know what's going to happen. You know, but, you know, winning cures everything. So I always tell people, don't judge the man between January and August. Let's see what he does in September and October before we start critiquing him.
Yeah, I've made that joke a couple of times on our lives. I feel like that press conference was probably the most televised sports event that's happened since the Super Bowl in Philly. Like, everybody was waiting for that. It was hard. I feel for him. I hope that he's going to be great. I think he will be great.
Yep.
But so you said deletions of veterans, and one person came to mind. We all saw that image. We all saw that video on our last game of Zach Ertz and company sitting out there on the field.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Zach Ertz, you know, career in Philly, and what we're going to be, you know, losing out if he is in fact traded?
One of my favorite players on that team. A few years ago, had a phenomenal year with over 100 catches, and of course, he got injured this year. You know, it's a young man's game. Teams are trying to get younger, and especially in the Eagles' case, because of the salary cap situation, they've got to make some tough financial decisions. And, you know, it's tough to watch Zach Ertz sit in front of the media and shed tears, because in his mind, he's worn the Philadelphia Eagles uniform for the last time, especially when he's given so much to this organization. He's been so vibrant in the community with his foundations and things like that. But also from a business sense, Zach knows that, you know, nothing lasts forever. He's been in that locker room long enough to see a lot of good players come and go. And now he's at that point where it's his time to possibly move on. But the positive in Zach's mind should be, I still have an opportunity to play this game that I love, and that there's still somebody out there who wants me to be on their team, to be a viable contributor to whoever's team it is. So as much as it pains me to leave one entity, you know, now I'm looking forward to a new chapter in my professional career, a career, by the way, that's on the shorter side more so than the longer side when you take in his age consideration.
Definitely. I'm gonna miss Zach.
I think everyone's gonna miss Zach. But to speak on like the younger, obviously we have the draft coming up and we have that number 6 pick. In your eyes, do we go ahead and try to maybe bolster our defense and grab a linebacker that we so desperately need, and a Micah Parsons? Or do we go with the sexier pick, the more exciting of like a Jamar Chase if he's there at wide receiver?
Whatever you pick, you better be an impact player, not just for 4 years, but for X amount of years to come. Somebody who can be with his organization 6, 7, 8 years and be an impact player for your organization. They have so many needs right now. And people keep asking me, where do you think they should go with their pick? You know, for me, I want a skill position player. I want a wide receiver. You know, they could always use a wide receiver. And picking number 6, you would get a premier wide receiver that's coming out of the draft. But they also need to fix the offensive line. You know, your quarterback is only as good as the guys blocking in front of him. You know, you need a thumper in the middle of your defense, a linebacker. You know, look at the better defenses in the National Football League. They're built around your linebacking core. Pittsburgh's been linebacking you for years. Even when I covered that team for 10 years, it was always linebacker you with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You look at the Baltimore Ravens, it's all about their linebackers, so on and so forth. So you need some linebackers. And outside of Darius Slay, you got to fix the secondary. So it's like, you know, a coin toss right now. Do you take a cornerback? Do you take that thumper linebacker? Do you get another edge rush? Don't count out edge rushers. You know, I don't think Malik Jackson's going to be back. I don't know if Vinny Curry's going to be back unless they get him at league minimum for next year. So you're going to need another edge rusher to go with the Brandon Graham on the other side. Plus, you know, we don't know what kind of scheme they're going to run in terms of rotating players in and out. You can always use a wide receiver. You know, they're never going to draft a running back that high. You know, so you can count that out. Will they take an offensive tackle? Will they take an offensive? I don't know. You know, I think it's a very intriguing conversation that will continue daily from now until Roger Goodell steps to the podium and says, with the 6th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Eagles take Joe Blow, punter from Buck Tussle University.
Exactly. Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. We're all ready for that. We're all, what's her name? Sarah Fuller from Vanderbilt. I'm pretty sure that's going to be our number 6 pick.
There you go.
Very high ceiling, you know. Yes. But, you know, to keep on Howie Roseman, look, I know a lot of people in the comment section. Shout out to everybody in here. We got 50 people in here. Please do check the link in the description. Go check out Gun on One, the podcast. It is amazing. Y'all need to definitely go check it out. But to stay on Howie and Jeffrey, I know this is something that we've all been talking about in the offseason. I want to ask you, from being in the locker room, how vocal are they? Are they kind of sitting the office type guys, or do they come out and, you know, are they vocal? Because I feel like they're very quiet, but I know it's probably different behind the scenes a little bit.
You mean Jeffrey and Howie?
Yes,
or just Jeffrey? Yeah. I think Jeffrey Lurie's the kind of guy, he likes to hire people and let them do their jobs. He doesn't like to interfere. He's very aware of everything that goes on. He's always abreast of what he needs to know. Obviously, when it's your toy, you make the final decisions no matter what. So he's very much involved, but he doesn't like to be out in front, you know, like a Jerry Jones. You know, that's not Jeffrey Lurie. Howie Roseman the same way. They very strategically pick and choose when they want to come out and speak to the public. You may see them once in May at OTAs. You might see Jeffrey always has this State of the Union at training camp, and you'll see them at the end of the season. They don't like to be too visible unless it's absolutely unavoidable. And so it has worked well, you know, that way. And whoever they've had in there, from Jeffrey's dealings with Andy Reid on with Chip Kelly and Doug Pederson, it's a formula that has worked. You know, it's always a meeting of the minds, bouncing ideas off of each other, and then obviously somebody making the decision. And Jeffrey likes to let the people that he hires in certain positions make those decisions. And if he has to jump in, he'll jump in.
And kind of speaking on Howie, I know that everyone, especially in Eagles Nation, has been kind of complaining about him all season long and kind of
kind of.
I'm trying to be nice. But between all his moves, the contracts, the draft, and everything, but he's been able to survive 3 head coaches. And I feel like a lot of times GMs, when head coaches go, GMs go with them. Are we over exaggerating on how maybe bad Howie has been? Or is he actually like a pretty good GM that, like I just said, are we just over exaggerating?
Well, you know, he's a GM who caught lightning in a bottle and gave this city, this fan base, something they had never had before, a Super Bowl trophy. He hadn't won a championship since 1960. You know, orchestrated, moved up the ladder to get Carson Wentz. He's drafted some good players, the Miles Sanders, players like that, so on and so forth. But for every hit Howie has had, he's had too many misses. As a guy who's supposed to be building the organization with good, young, talented players, he's done a good job of bringing in free agents to strategically put in the team structure offensively and defensively. But we think, you know, in a general consensus, he's missed too many times on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks. When you take a J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and you watch what a DK Metcalf is doing out there in Seattle. And granted, that's not just on Howie. There's a whole bunch of other teams that passed on DK Metcalf because supposedly he had a personal issue, attitude problems, and things like that. But there are a lot of players that have had personal issue, attitude problems, things like that have gone on to flourish. It cost them in draft status, but they've gone to flourish elsewhere. But I think, I think the consensus would agree with me, Howie has missed too many times more so than hit in terms of getting players. So that's why there's a lot of negativity towards Howie. Okay, now I think this will be the most pivotal year of his tenure with the Philadelphia Eagles, because now you have to tear this thing down. And if you're going to tear it down and the quarterback you just drafted less than 5 years ago is not going to be here, what are you going to do to make a competitive entity, not in 2022, right now? See, people will accept losing if they see that the team is moving in the right direction. If you've drafted well, if the holdover young players that you've drafted in recent years past are improving and contributing more, they will understand, okay, if they decide to go with Jalen Hurts, that he's still learning. It's a learning curve for a young quarterback, and it's a learning curve for a bunch of young receivers. But if it fails, it's going to be fire and brimstone towards Howie Roseman at the end of 2021. So if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I'm sitting behind closed door and I'm telling Howie, all right, man, this is it for you. You've survived all these landmines through the years. You know, I have to give you your kudos. Every free agent player you got in 2017 worked out perfect for us. We got to hoist that Lombardi trophy and had the celebration of a lifetime. But here we are now, 4 seasons plus removed, and it's a whole lot worse instead of being a whole lot better, or as consistent as we stood at the podium at that parade and said, this is our new norm, okay? When you utter those words, you're telling us you're going to be like the New England Patriots, consistent winners for years to come. And it got worse and worse and worse until the bottom fell out in 2020. So how you have this one last chance, because I'm paying you a whole lot of money to make me look good as an owner. So, you know, it's like that old saying from Clint Eastwood in his movies, do you feel lucky? You know, so if for Howie Roseman, how lucky do you feel? Because you better come up 7-11 in 2021. If not, I've got to look for another GM to take us into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said this before, man. He's one of the only people in the world that can create his own job. I feel like this cap situation is basically, he was like, oh, you can't really get nobody to fix that, but I know a guy. His name's Howie. You know, so it's funny that you bring that up. It's true. A lot of people are very upset with Howie Roseman. Shoot, we have Fire Howie shirts. You know, it is what it is. You got to give the people what they want.
See, I can't be doing that kind of stuff. I have to go back in that building one day. So I can't be doing it.
So let me ask you, I got 2 more questions, then we'll get you out of here, man. So let me ask you, realistically, what are your opinions going forward for the Philadelphia Eagles? What do you think they're going to be in 2021 and beyond?
True. Well, there'll be one of 32 teams playing football in the National Football League. In terms of how competitive they'll be or how good they could potentially be, can't honestly answer that until September. You know, it always fascinates me how people, especially when it got to the preseason and people are looking at teams in preseason games, and we've got this and we're going to do that. And I sit back and I'm like, I don't judge any team by preseason. Number one, we see preseason teams go undefeated and end up at the bottom of the barrel in the regular season. We see preseason teams that can't come close to winning a preseason game. All of a sudden, they're deep into the playoffs. So I don't judge a whole lot in terms of wins and losses by the preseason. I'm looking at individual play and the potential. And, you know, even with that said, I love when these people, well, he looked great in practice. Well, yeah, he's playing against his own teammates. His own teammates not trying to rip his head off. You know, wait until the bullets start flying for real. You know, he made 12 catches in practice. Well, so what? It's a controlled environment. Right. You're not supposed to hit your teammate. The coaches would tell you, I need you guys to be healthy when we kick off in September. Don't be out here trying to kill each other. I understand you're fighting to make a job, but you know what? Do it within the structure of what we're trying to do here and let the best man win. So in terms of what they're going to be in 2021, we don't know who the quarterback is. We don't know what the offensive line is going to look like. we don't even know what this defense is going to look like that needs help in the trenches, linebacker, secondary. So I can't honestly answer that right now, to be honest. If I could get on the phone and call Miss Cleo, God rest her soul, if I can call Miss Cleo, maybe I can get some insight. But I honestly cannot answer. And I tell everybody, I said, I don't know what to tell you right now. Maybe after the draft even, we'll have more clarity in terms of what this team is looking like, what they're trying to do here. But as we sit here today in February, that's a tough one to answer.
Yeah, I gotta draw straws, man. I gotta reach. I gotta reach for this guy.
I hear you. Now, see, because I'm not gonna give you the leeway if I say they're gonna be an 11-5 team. I'm saying you want me to come back on your podcast. Yeah, DGunn, you said they were going to be a division contender, and here's the clip right here. No, you're not going to get me like that. I've been around the block too many times. I'm taking a political approach. I'm taking right down the middle political approach right now to save my good name.
And before Joe asks his last question, would you be shocked if we drafted a quarterback at that 6th pick?
No. Wouldn't be surprised one bit. I think they've gone as far as they could go with Nick Foles. Sudfeld, Nate Sudfeld. They brought him back. He finally gets a game, and he's not it, even as a backup. Let's face it, the Arizona Cardinals did it just a few years ago. They drafted Josh Rosen, got rid of him, and all of a sudden went with Kyler Murray. This organization took Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round. I wouldn't be shocked if they feel a quarterback. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. If Trevor Lawrence slipped to the number 6 pick in the NFL draft and the Eagles didn't take him, I'm jumping in my car and driving right through the gates of NovaCare, right through the front door. I'll take the risk of going to jail. I think I know enough people in the organization, they might understand
we got
my passion and will bail me out. But Trevor Lawrence is not dropping that far. But if Nick Sirianni and those guys feel that there's a quarterback that behooves them to seriously look at. But then you've got to sell that to the general public and the media. Wait a minute, you took 2 quarterbacks highly in back-to-back years when you needed help on the offensive line. You needed help here. So you have 2 players, one of which is not going to play, and one of which handcuffed you from taking a Patrick Queen or somebody like that who could have helped you enhance one aspect of it. So I wouldn't surprise me because we've seen it in recent years, but I don't think the Eagles are going to take a quarterback.
I respect that. See, and it's funny because I say that. I brought that up. I said the whole Arizona Cardinals thing, and everybody jumped down my throat, man. Come on. But also, I'm glad you reiterated it. So, last question I have is actually from a subscriber as well, and they wanted to know, what is your favorite Eagles locker room moment, if you can even pick one?
Wow. It would have to be after they won the Super Bowl. And it's not just the locker room, but it started on the field. By the time I got down to the field and the celebration was going on, all these guys that I've gotten to know through the years, tears streaming down their faces, and they're embracing each other just like they'd hit the lottery, because basically they did. They hit the NFL lottery by finally capturing something no other Eagles team was able to accomplish. You look at all those good teams Andy Reid had throughout the early 2000s. You had Chip Kelly, his first 2 years, had back-to-back 10-6 winners. And all of a sudden, they finally get that monkey off their backs. They didn't have to hear anymore that there were 12 Super Bowl championships in the NFC East, and the Eagles had a goose egg on the board. They could finally get that monkey off their back. And then to get in the locker room and see the emotions flowing and the adrenaline flowing. And again, you have to be objective. People say, you shouldn't get too friendly with athletes because then it affects your objectivity. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. You can be tough on players and still be friends with players. Okay. And I've always done that. It has worked for me. And I've had conversations even before I would go on Eagles post-game live with a player. Player would say, DGunn, I heard what you said about me before. And I said, really? Tell me something that I said that you didn't already talk about in a locker room or another open platform. Oh, yeah, okay, you're right. So, but the emotions in that locker room were second to none. And I've covered this game, like I said, a long time. And for me, that would probably be my best individual moment when it comes to covering this team in the 23 plus years that I've covered this team.
That was my best moment as a fan.
Yeah.
So I could definitely agree with you. I would have been kind of surprised if you didn't say that, to be honest, man. But like I said, man, thank you so much for taking your time coming on here, man.
Absolutely.
This was an absolute honor and pleasure. Like I said to everybody in the chat, got like 60 people still in here. Go in the description.
Hey, and all you people that arrived late to the chat, once again, DGunn is not drinking. I'm not promoting sparkling water. I just want people to understand. I'm just having sparkling water. I'm not drinking beer or any kind of alcohol. I don't want to see you on Twitter talking about DGunn getting drunk while he's on a podcast. All right, we cleared that up. All right, I'm sorry.
DGunn get drunk on Philly.
No, you're not going to see that. No, you're not going to see that. No.
But man, it was an honor. It was an honor and a pleasure. Everybody go in the description. Check out Gun on One, his podcast and his YouTube channel, man. Definitely go subscribe. Go show love to a legend and somebody that's done so much for the Philly. Yeah, it's you, man. It's you. It's you.
Now, you know what? People say that all the time, but you know what? I've been blessed to do what I do for a long time. I'm always humble. I always try to be humble about what I do. I think when you're humble, good things come to you. When you have to brag on yourself, that means you're not confident within yourself in terms about receiving accolades. When you continue to walk your life by faith, to be humble who you are, to be honest, have integrity at all times, everything else takes care of itself. And that's another lesson for all you future journalists out there. When you abide by those formulas, you will have tremendous amount of success. You don't have to tell people how good you are. Your actions will speak louder than your words in a lot of ways. Again, so you know what? I'm giving you 2 lessons for free, man. Most people pay me for this stuff, man.
I'm getting too much right now. I'm getting too much right now for free. I mean, hey, you can keep talking. I'm
happy to do it, man. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thank you.
Definitely, man. And everybody, like I said, definitely go check them out. But other than that, man, y'all know what it is. It is Fly Eagles Fly, and we are out here. Peace.